Welcome to Creator Toolbox, a show brought to you by the ServiceNow Developer Program, where we demo new ServiceNow features for every developer's toolbox. My name is Alan Andreas, Senior Developer Advocate.
Hey guys, Laszlo, also Senior Developer Advocate, and I'm very excited about today's episode. Who do we have today, Alan?
So we have Vanessa Wang here with our Workflow Studio team as well, that they're going to be talking about some of these cool features coming out in the Zurich release. So Vanessa, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and feel free to take it away.
Yeah, hi everyone. Excited to join this episode of Creator Toolbox. Just a quick intro. I'm Vanessa. I'm a product manager on the workflow automation team, and specifically, I focus on Flow Designer. So today I'll be sharing some new features that we've made available in Zurich. So before we proceed, just wanted to flash this safe harbor notice for everyone watching. This presentation may contain forward-looking statements based on our beliefs and assumptions as of this date that are for informational purposes only. A quick overview of Flow Designer and how it fits into the ServiceNow platform. So Flow Designer is part of the greater umbrella of workflow automation products that includes things like Workflow Studio, playbooks, decision management, and more. Flow Designer specifically helps automate work by empowering our users to build multi-step flows from reusable components without having to code. We're constantly adding to Flow Designer to expand its capabilities and make it more robust for our users. So today I'm going to highlight two new features that we've come up with in Zurich. The first is Aggregate Subflow stages, and the second is complex objects, flow variables, and append logic. So let's dive into the first one. So one core feature of Flow Designer is that users can add stages to flows and subflows that communicate the current stage of a request to the end user. So in this, they can change the state labels and their names to reflect the progress of a request, flow, or subflow as it runs, and also see what state it's currently in. To give you an idea of what you can expect to see, some of these stages can be pending, in progress, skipped, complete, canceled, or error. So previously, prior to Zurich, when users modularized their flows into subflows, the stage level details within those subflows weren't visible in the parent flow. So this meant you couldn't see progress of nested subflows, making it difficult to track progress and understand how execution is going at a more granular level. So now by surfacing subflow stage details directly within the parent flow, we offer greater transparency, traceability for users that are monitoring this execution and using this to see different blockers across their nested flows. So in Zurich, to enable this, users can select the new Show Subflow Stages option that easily aggregates and displays those stages from each subflow in line of the parent. And this gives the user just a more comprehensive view of all execution stages. So before I jump into the demo, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer as well.
Vanessa, did you get any feedback or requests from our community around the lack of this feature with regards to, I don't know, what sort of workarounds would typically people resort to or implement in their solutions without the aggregate subflow stages?
Yeah, great question. So we actually did speak to a customer who was trying to see the different progress of their subflow stages, as we mentioned. And they were kind of doing their own manual workarounds that seemed more clunky by adding additional stages within the parent. So I think that this is a pretty broad solution for a lot of different use cases, and it kind of helps users avoid that, manual addition and like kind of working around. So this definitely feels more intuitive, and it's informed by those customer experiences.
Absolutely, Vanessa. This has been something that for years has been a thing where, as you mentioned, customers are kind of going around it. I know before, not, I don't like to admit that I did something kind of hacky, but in a past life, yeah, it's basically you're going in and kind of manipulating the UI a bit, whether that's on Service Portal and you're trying to inject kind of additional stages into the record status page on the portal, things like that. So
Exactly.
very excited to see the demo for this because it's definitely something that people are going to be very excited about.
And
Yeah,
especially like
absolutely.
Alan, your master architect, a technical architect, we've been advocating for years, to not use monster flows, use subflows, use reusable blocks during your process design and flow designer solutioning. And you just didn't have that feature, right? So there's one more reason why subflows are, I guess, just better than using those monstrous hacky flows that, yeah, admittedly, some of us have resorted to in the past.
Yeah, that's a great call out. And I definitely think that aligns with our ServiceNow best practices of, breaking those flows down into reusable subflows so that it's more robust for every use case. Cool.
Okay, I see. Let's see this in action, Vanessa.
Yeah, sounds good. So right now I'm in Flow Designer and I have a parent flow with multiple stages. So flow start, calling subflow, and flow end. One of these stages calls a subflow, and let's take a look at that to see that the subflow also contains 3 additional stages. So we have subflow start, asking for approval, and subflow end. So prior to the Zurich release in a Yokohama instance, only the parent flow stages were visible during execution. So you'll notice here that there's no information about the subflow stages despite the fact that they're being executed, which makes it harder to trace what's actually happening in a nested flow. So going back to our Zurich instance, now in Zurich, when you enable this checkbox to show subflow stages, you can see the subflow stages appear directly in the parent flow's execution timeline. So let's see this in action. I'm going to create a new requested item record, as this is what the flow is operating on. And when we go here and we test it with this record, we now see that the subflow stages are rolled up directly with the parent stages in this flow timeline.
Nice.
So one thing I want to call out here is that the stages in both the flow and the subflow appear in the order that you define here in subflow stages. So for any reason, if you wanted to see these stages appear in a different order in your execution timeline, you can drag and drop to reorder them here and place them in the desired order that you would want to see them in.
Yeah, Vanessa, I think that's fantastic. And I also like that you can remove them as well, right? So that way, maybe you have something internally as a team that you care about, but you don't want that facing outward, right, to customers or something like that, that you can actually remove that from being visible. So you have kind of the best of both worlds, and having the ability to move them around really gives, these builders the flexibility to design it however they need to that suits them. So looks great.
In
Yeah,
fact,
absolutely.
which one is default, Vanessa? Is it are the subflow stages shown by default, or I always have to explicitly set like show subflow stage if I want to show that stage when I'm designing my subflow?
Yeah, you will have to make sure that you are explicitly checking this box. It's pretty intuitive to be able to turn this on and off within your flow as it appears under any subflow that you're adding to your flow.
No, it's just good to know. So I'm not expecting that to show up just out of the blue. Good.
Yeah. So yeah, overall, this is a key enhancement for customers to gain more visibility and more control over their flows.
Amazing.
So the second new feature I want to talk about today is complex objects, and there are actually two parts here, flow variables and append logic. So let's dive into the first one. So a little background on flow variables. Flow variables are similar to subflow inputs and outputs in that they let you define data available to a flow or subflow. However, flow variables allow you to set and retrieve values throughout a flow instead of just the start or end of it. So when it comes to flows that deal with data, updating, referencing, modifying these values, customers need flexibility, which is why we've added support for complex objects made up of the data types you see here. We've also added support for the arrays of these objects. So previously implementing these required custom scripting, and now we make it easier with just a few clicks. So in Flow Designer, you can navigate to flow variables here. And now you'll see the new options to create an object or an array of an object. So let's try these out right now. When you create a new variable of type object, you can add child variables of pretty much any type that you would see before and define the schema for it accordingly. So something else we can do is create an array of these objects. And then likewise, we can also define the child fields of those objects that the array contains. So something else I want to call out here is that there are a couple of different ways that you can manipulate these fields once you've defined them in your flow variables. So you can actually change the indentation of these once you've defined them. And you can also reorder your variables in case you want to change how they appear in your flow variables. So the second part to this is the new flow logic we've introduced, append to flow variables. This is a new logic that lets you take in an input and append it to an array flow variable like the ones that we just demonstrated. So with this, users can build up a list of entries dynamically by adding those entries incrementally. And this is great for use cases where you're, let's say, collecting multiple user inputs or logging where data is collected across multiple stages. And again, previously, there wasn't an unscripted, easy way to do this. So again, I'm in Flow Designer, and this time I've created a subflow. So we go into our flow variables, and you can see that I've defined a flow variable with type array object, where each object that is a child part of the parent array contains two strings. So what I'm doing in this subflow is I'm taking some subflow inputs and appending these iteratively to that array. So how I've done this is creating two subflow inputs of the same object type I defined in the flow variable. And something I want to call out here is it's important to make sure that the schema names are matched with what you see in the flow variables. This is sort of like what you see with a class and variables in typical programming. Now you can add the new append to flow variables flow logic and pass in your subflow input as the data to append and select your flow variable as the thing to append to. And I've just done this twice, once for each subflow input. Finally, I'm logging the value of the array. So let's test this. What I can do here is pass a couple random strings as input, and because of the nature of the subflow going through and appending this to the flow variable, we'd expect to see this array build up iteratively with each subflow input here that we see being added as an object. So we can go ahead and run the test. So when the flow runs, each of these inputs is appended to the array. And we can see here in our log and verify that our array indeed does contain 2 objects of 2 strings each.
That's cool. You definitely had to. I don't know how other people did that, but I always just scripted the action. Um, honestly, I wish like both of these features you showed us were available just a little bit sooner. Literally, the solution I presented at Knowledge was using arrays of objects in Flow Designer, and I I had to just script the whole thing honestly, and I had to work with strings, and appending my variables that way. So this can be a huge time saver.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does feel like just an intuitive addition to all of the different data types that we already support in Flow Variables and Flow Designer. But I definitely agree with you. It's a lot about empowering those users that aren't necessarily familiar with scripting or doing that on an everyday basis.
So I was trying to think, because obviously demoing it may be a little bit abstract with these made up variables, but I was just trying to think of some use cases. And like literally, we've got a lot of AI use cases these days, whether or not it's analysis related. But if you just need to iterate through different records, but say you only need, like as it was in my case back then, you only need 1 or 2 pieces of information from each record. You don't need the entire record, but you need to just go through a list, and you just want to collect those in an array, and maybe an array of objects with those 2, let's say, string properties or different data type properties. This is very powerful, and you no longer have to script the whole thing yourself. So yeah, it's great.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's very important to give the user control over what object types they're defining. And I agree for that use case. It's definitely something that's very robust and very powerful.
Yeah, and so Vanessa, if you don't mind, before you go, where would you say is a good place for the community to reach out to you to get either more information about the features coming out in the Zurich release into your area of purview, or if they have like questions and they want to leave product feedback? Do you have maybe somewhere you recommend that they try to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking for customer feedback and ways to improve our product for your users. So I would definitely recommend any ideas being submitted through the idea portal on ServiceNow. We're constantly checking that for new ideas. And yeah, we're always checking out social media and customer feedback there as well. So any input is always appreciated by our team, and we're definitely keeping an eye out for that.
And folks can also comment under this episode, and we'll just
Yeah.
forward everything to Vanessa's inbox.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we'll get it right over to Vanessa right away with that. And yeah, so we really appreciate you coming out and showing these features. There's a lot of people that are going to jump on Zurich right away, and they want to just know, what's the highlights here, what can we do, and this is definitely a game changer on both the flow stages for the subflows, increasing that transparency, really allowing that flexibility of the order that they're in, whether you even show them or not. It's not an all or nothing type of configuration as you showed. You can say, oh, hey, on this flow with this subflow in it, I want to show it, but on this other one, it's not really needed. It kind of muddies things up. We don't have to do that. And then these complex variables here looks great. So, Laszlo, anything else from your side?
No, I think we're good. Like Ellen said, this is great to see and have some explanation about these features as well, and in what scenarios can be useful in real world usage for our eager admins and developers. So very much appreciate you coming to the show and recording this with us. Was a pleasure.
Awesome. It was a pleasure meeting you both and getting to be a part of this. Thanks again.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. All right, so that's all we have for this episode of Creator Toolbox. We have many more episodes coming out or are already out, so be sure to check out our ServiceNow Developer YouTube channel, subscribe, and don't forget, hit that little notification bell that will keep you up to date and alerted exactly when these types of videos come out. So again, thank you everyone, and to Laszlo for being co-host today, and for Vanessa, thank you again. So we'll see you on the next one. Thanks everybody.